We all come to pray, going back for warriors, keeping the whispers away. In suits and in skirts, we're the rebels you say, talking about life and dreaming of a different day. On the back row we stay, in the back we don't sway, just let the sermon flow. We're on the back row.
It is time for another episode of the Cultural Hall. It is an Articles of News episode joined by the news wizard himself, Verlin. It seems odd or insensitive or weird if we go, hey, how are you? What's going on? And have this a little bit of banter at the beginning. So there are emails that we will respond to, and we'll do that in the future, but let's just get right to it. I've gone back and forth as to where I wanted to start. The passing of the prophet, the shooting in Michigan, and I think that probably we start with the shooting in Michigan. We are recording this on the 29th of September.
I sustain that vote. I sustain that.
Thank you. Any opposed? No one ever opposes. Why do we ask? I think that we start there. The details still sort of developing as far as a lot of this goes. It is the Monday after, so the shooting happened yesterday, just about this time actually, as we record. Sacrament, the actual administration of the sacrament had finished at the Grand Blanc ward house, and so people were doing the thing that some people do, which was making their way to the parking lot because the sacrament has been done. When a gentleman drives his truck, large, I think diesel truck, I want to say I read, a couple flags off the back of it into a church, incendiary device, jumps out, and starts shooting people.
Shooting people and lights the church on fire at the same time.
And mayhem, as you can probably imagine, starts to occur. People being shot at in the parking lot. Interesting. So they're kind of leaving from the sacrament meeting. I know one gentleman that was talked to, his windshield, or assumedly his windshield, but one of his windows in his car gets shot at. So his hand, he's got the shrapnel in his hand, the glass shrapnel. Heard the pops. People in the congregation. Stories already coming out of older people. Not like elderly people, but like older people taking the kids and hiding the kids, and ultimately, this gentleman sort of chased and shot by a Division of Natural Resources officer, and then another local township officer. So, dead. And then first reports was just that one had been killed beyond the shooter himself, and then a tale of another one, a couple that went to the hospital. So as of this recording, 4 dead, plus the shooter, 7 unaccounted for, and 8 in some various level of hospital
injury, I think. Yeah, they said 1 serious and 7 were obviously any kind of injury is serious, but they were not in danger of losing their life.
Yeah, stabilized, I think was what I read.
Stabilized, right.
Building, a complete loss, a complete disaster.
In fact, it's obvious he had an incendiary device. We've talked about other people trying to light churches on fire and how difficult it is to light our churches on fire. In this case, the whole building went up. It went up so fast that the ceiling collapsed before the firemen could actually get everything set up. And when you see pictures, it's a complete loss of the building.
Other stories kind of coming from town, different people on various social media things. So for the whatever, people having to run out. Apparently adjacent to this building, there are some woods, or at least a wooded area where people getting out of the church building as quick as they possibly can and just running and continuing to run. Many people in that area, this is members of the church, were at this building the night before for a teen festival. So this building is the stake center for this part of Michigan. State conference to be held there in 2 weeks' time, the week after general conference scheduled to be state conference. That meeting will obviously be held somewhere else now. So a large building, completely gone, completely gutted, and they expect to find many, if not all of those that are unaccounted for somewhere in
the building.
in the building, in the rubble. Yeah.
It's a huge tragedy. It's impossible to talk about how big of a loss this is. Obviously, a huge loss to the individuals and families involved, to the congregation, to the stake, to everyone, as we think about this kind of horrendous thing happening, not so long after a couple of other horrendous things that have happened in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So difficult to kind of absorb and really figure out how to react to it.
And so I guess as we continue to kind of present the things from it, and then there is a much other conversation that I want to have. The gunman, his name is Thomas Jacob Sanford, 40 years old.
Father, married,
Iraq
and father
veteran.
of a daughter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No record, at least that I have found. No sort of legal or even recorded mental things. There apparently was some thought that maybe other churches in the area would have been targets as well. Question marks that were in the story that I read is, does this have some sort of relation to the passing of President Nelson, which we will get to in a whole other story that's coming up. But still motive completely unknown at this point. There are stories on social media. I probably won't repeat them because I feel like it's just fitting in the narrative until they're sort of confirmed. But things that he could or could not have said to folks while in his rampage inside the church, and so I think the other part of it for me, and this is how I think human beings are, but this hits different to me. Always a tragedy, but it feels a little bit more personal. It feels a little bit more disturbing. It feels a little bit. It feels a lot bit close to home. Hearing the news reports being like, "Oh, it's immediately after the administration of the sacrament." Like there's so much of it that I can see. Well, I went to church yesterday. Well,
I mean, they said it was at
10.
As soon as they said it was at 10:25 a.m. in my mind, I automatically thought, okay, 25 minutes into the service, where are we?
Yeah,
we've just finished with the sacrament almost every time.
Yeah. And immediately I go, well, I wasn't looking at the door. I wasn't looking for a truck to come through my building yesterday. And neither were any of these people. And yet, several have lost their lives. The building is destroyed. Their world turned upside down. And there is something to that for me that I so unsettling. I'm struggling to find the pieces of how do I know that this isn't going to happen to me? What am I going to do if I'm ready, I've got to be vigilant. And I've been everything from Googling where, and this is all real, Googling where my nearest concealed carry class is, to what the best kind of gun that I could wear underneath a dress shirt that, or in the back part of or maybe in a suit, because so many of the times when I'm in a public setting, I am formally dressed, and thinking of everything like that, of thinking about hey, maybe Zoom church is the safe way to go. Maybe kind of auto-correcting that way, to reaching out to anyone that I know out that way to just be like, this is terrible. And I'm so sad for you. If there's anything that we can do, to trying to think of something that the cultural hall audience could do to rally behind these people, to say, hey, we love you and we're thinking of you, to trying to reach out to people to get the very raw story of what it was like to be in the building. All of these things to try and find some sort of order in the chaos. I want to blame someone. I want to know what it is, and then I want a gun so that it won't happen to me.
I think that's a very natural reaction.
Sure.
I think there are a lot of people that are having those same kinds of thoughts. And so again, I want to say our hearts go out to those who have been impacted directly and indirectly first. But I think this is going to have to create a more serious dialogue across the entire church, certainly within the United States, in terms of how we respond, number one, and how we prepare if needed and as needed for the future. And as you expressed, I think lots of people are going through the same thought process. I've seen lots of comments on social media about, well, this is why we need to allow people to carry guns in the church. This is why we need to do this or that. I'm going to renew my, people are saying they're going to renew their concealed carry. For full transparency, I had a concealed carry. It's since expired. And I actually got it just for convenience of if I ever wanted to buy a gun. It's much easier to do in North Carolina if you have a carry permit. But in this case, I think that the church, certainly at the stake level, at the coordinating council level, at the area level, and at the church headquarters level, I must certainly be planning to have a dialogue and come up with a uniform plan and approach that we can use across the church for creating a safer environment and helping to prevent these kinds of things without having everyone carrying in their suit pocket or their purse their favorite firearm.
Yeah. Also want to reflect, like, hearts to the families and the people out there, and I think we'll figure something that we can do, even if it's maybe there very well could be something with General Conference where it's announced that it's a day of fasting within the church or something like that. But I think we are people who at very least like to do something, so we will do something.
Right.
As an aside, and so it's difficult for me because I want to talk about lots of other parts of this as well. I want to make sure that proper respect has been paid to the people and to the congregation and everything there. And
can I add one more?
Yes, please.
I also want to make sure, I am sure that the wife and daughter of this perpetrator will be traumatized for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And I want to keep them in mind as well. Our hearts and prayers go out to the victims, but to the family of the perpetrator, I can't even imagine their thoughts and feelings at this point in time. And I hope that people are giving them grace,
right,
to be able to deal with this.
I appreciate that. Now, having all of that said, I know many people who carry a church already. You're not supposed to. It's in the handbook. But lots of people. When the church shooting in Nevada happened a couple years ago, we spoke with someone who was there. That's an old episode. You can find it in the show notes. There were many guns in that building. So I'm not foolish enough to think, hey, it's in the handbook and we do it, which is an interesting social aspect of we always follow the handbook, but not when it comes to carrying.
Except when we don't think it applies to us.
Exactly. It is unfortunate. I wish that it were not this way. There needs to be a secure plan for each of our church buildings. I hate that that's where we're at.
We do need a security plan. I can't remember. It seems 5 or 6 years ago, because of one of these other incidents, our stake at the time put together a little security plan.
Yep.
And at the time, what we agreed to do is each ward was going to have, I can't even remember what we called the position, but a security person. And that person's job was to be wandering the halls in the foyer. And if they were qualified, i.e. if they were a member of law enforcement of some kind, then they could be carrying. And their job was to be basically on call for any situation and keep their eyes and ears open and their heads on the proverbial swivel to be watching out. And we were lucky at the time. We had a member of our local police force who often had his shifts on Sunday mornings. And so he would come to church dressed in his uniform, and he kind of performed that function as part of his callings. But I think we've kind of fallen off of those plans. And I think this will necessitate us having a plan that's uniform across the church, adaptable to each location. as necessary.
Well, I remember in articles of news within the last 6 months, it wasn't a violent attack. It was like a weirdo being in the hallway. I want to say this is
Yes.
Nevada or something, right? And
It was a young men and young women's night, I think, if I recall correctly.
and that particular either ward or stake then started to put in these security protocols. And here and there are some things that could be. Obviously, this wouldn't stop this particular issue, but we always say visitors welcome, and we mean it for the most part. That's a whole episode for another time, how much we mean it and how welcome we are, but that's not where we're going right now. But, we have multiple doors that we could lock multiple doors and then have it be, one to get in. Will the deacons always, put a chair in the door so that they can be able to sneak in and all that? Yeah, of course. But could we be doing more as far as that goes? And then the other thing is, sure, we can, Elder Christensen, who really believes in carrying a gun, like he could be that. But also, our church services are a couple of hours, and every municipality has cops that, as off-duty officers, do security. There is nothing to say that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints couldn't say, hey, Officer Friendly, we would love to hire you from 10 to 4 every Sunday. It's a security detail. By and large, you'll never have to do anything, but come and do and be this, and then we're not playing cop. We have a cop every building.
And there are several ways to handle that. I mean, there are organizations now that you can engage, just like we do for our physical facilities now. Those are all contracted out.
Yeah.
You can contract out across the entire country security for all of your buildings.
Yeah.
Or you can do it at the local level. Either way works, but every police force has officers who sign up on or want to work off-duty hours to make additional income. And so the possibility exists to do this if that's what the church decides to do.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I prefer they do that first or hire full-time janitors first, but we've talked about that in the past.
Just like the sign up. Families A through F, you'll be providing security this Sunday. Go ahead and be outside. Seems a little bit whatever to joke about that, but it is a thing. Something will need to be done about this. Oh, but it was just a one-off. It's just a guy, and we don't know that there's any relation, and all these kind of things. I don't know. I think America's at a feverish point that we just need to start doing this.
I think there's a lot of factors that are put together. We've had several of these incidents in the past. Yes, I believe that this is likely to come out to be a pretty random event when it comes out. Again, I'm not going to speculate on too much because there's so much inaccuracy out there right now. And I am one, maybe to a fault, who believes you have to wait until all of the evidence comes out, till you really believe what's happened. But it's enough, and we're in a certain situation in the country at this point in time where we have to think about these things seriously.
Yeah.
So I fully expect that will happen. And in fact, we received a message from our state president last night acknowledging what happened in Michigan and letting us all know that as a stake, they are having a discussion and will come out with an emergency plan.
Just a quick aside on all of this. So yesterday was at church, went to church, had the opportunity to go to church, worked later last night. And so I was there.
Did you teach yesterday?
I did. Here is the thing that is interesting about my church experience yesterday. Sacrament meeting. So the shooting in Michigan had already occurred. We're in sacrament meeting, and sacrament meeting starts. Welcome, everyone. We're certainly mourning the loss of the president of the church, Russell M. Nelson, which, again, we're going to do the second half of this episode about the passing of President Nelson.
Yes.
The opening prayer, the man wept in his prayer. You know how sometimes you have the long sacrament prayers, not the prayer on the sacrament, but like the opening, the invocation, and they're super long, and it's a guy who is like, well, I haven't been asked to talk for a long time, but I'm going to go ahead.
There's a sermon in the prayer.
Yeah, there's a sermon in his prayer. Tremendously heartfelt, choked up prayer. And
that's wonderful.
And that was the only mention of President Nelson in our entire sacrament meeting.
Wow. Now, did you have Fast Sunday this week or
No,
not?
this was two speakers. They had just released the Stake Young Men's president, and then the new one, or it was some that I don't know who the
Okay.
other was.
Yeah, because of General Conference next week, our stake had Fast and Testimony meeting
Yeah.
yesterday. And so literally everyone who stood up talked about President Nelson
Hmm.
in some way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the prayers mentioned President Nelson, and the bishopric member who conducted mentioned President Nelson.
Yeah. Talks were great. Meeting ends, and I was like, "This is odd." So, as a quick aside, and this is not any sort of, because I now know, because of some other comments that I've said, more people in my ward listen to this show than I thought. So let me just make this quick aside. I don't think that this is specific to my ward leadership, but I think that we have to be aware, and by aware I mean react aware. That's not even what I want to say, but I think we need to be sensitive to the moment a little bit better.
Yes. Well, I'm wondering, in this case, do you think it's perhaps that people were a little shell-shocked, to use a terrible term, because of the second announcement? When we had our meeting, I think I received notice of this tragedy in Michigan just as I was about to walk into sacrament meeting.
Jeez.
And no one else mentioned the Michigan tragedy during sacrament meeting or during elders quorum at all, which I was somewhat relieved because we talked about President Nelson. But I fully imagine that there's a lot of conversations going on at home about this now.
Yeah.
And I feel kind of bad because I think this kind of tragedy is going to overshadow the announcement with President Nelson and his passing in some ways.
Yeah. And I don't know what I expected necessarily. Do we flip and say, hey, because even if you just knew the passing of President Nelson and didn't know about this other part, to me it feels like you pivot. We've had 17 of these in the life of our church.
Yeah.
I feel like you pivot, or you call up brother whoever, hey, I don't know if you knew President Nelson passed. Can you incorporate that into, whatever you're going to be speaking about today? Because to not, it becomes like this, I hate this phrase, becomes this elephant of the room where you just kind of go, are we not, is this not a big deal to anyone else? Are we not recognizing that this has happened? So very quickly. So then we get into the second hour, where I'm supposed to teach Elder McCune's Joy and Covenants or something like that. And I get up and I said, hey, I know that there are some of you in here that, I can't remember how I said it. I'm sure I was snotty a little, but I said something like, I know that there are some of you that feel like the lesson that is assigned is what we need to talk about today, and I just want to let everyone go from that. We may not get to the assigned general conference talk at all, and I'm perfectly okay with it. And so I started the lesson and I said, we are going to sit in silence for 5 minutes. And I start the stopwatch on my phone, and it sat us in for 5 minutes. I get done and I said, that will literally, and this is not hyperbole, that will be the most thoughtful, silent 5 minutes of my entire week this week, having taken that time. And then I just asked, hey, what are thoughts and feelings? And, one guy raises his hand and talks about how he had been in the ward with several of President Nelson's daughters, and about how they revered him not only as a church leader, but as a patriarch for their family, and being able to talk more of kind of the personal character of him. And another one, raises their hand and talks about the changes within the church and some of the blessings of that. And then, I voiced, there's this whole other thing that's going on. And then we started to get into some of the shooting and, talking about how scary that must have been and all of these things. And And then we talked a little bit about how there is some apprehension with some folks about President Oaks being the next prophet. And we talked about how there have been lots of people who, as apostles, have said things that you go, ooh, geez, and then they become the prophet, and we go, their demeanor sort of changes and what that mantle might be
Yes.
like, and have that whole discussion, and then ended up doing like a 5-minute lesson. We read a quick story from it, and then in the closing prayer, here's what I thought was unique. I don't know that I've ever heard it. I can't even remember who it was in my word that said it, but in his closing prayer, he asked a blessing on anyone in our ward. Now, this sounds generic, like, of course you've heard this before, Richie, but the way that he said it was specific, and I'm not going to recount it very well, but he said, he asked the Lord to pour out a blessing on any of the brethren who might be struggling, like, with, I just essentially just struggling. Like, it was a pray for the welfare of the specific people of that elders quorum. Almost like how
It's wonderful.
yeah. But like how how like our evangelical friends will be like, "Hey, well, you need something to pray for?" Like, it was that sort of embracing
Yeah.
of, "Hey,
Yeah.
I'll
Like a
pray for
prayer
you."
group
Yeah, a
kind of
prayer. Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
and name of Jesus Christ, amen. And then we left, and had a few people who were like, "Hey, that was that was." There's always some people that are like, "Whatever, Brother Stedman's teaching. I should have not come," but. I think that
I
by and
doubt that.
large, there is
I've been
trust.
there. I've been
Trust
there.
me. Trust me, there is, and that's fine. I even said that during the lesson. I'm like, listen, I know I'm not for everyone, but I am for some of you, where some of you are not for that person. So allow me the opportunity. But God done and felt like that was the way to have that discussion about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I had an interesting dilemma being Elders Quorum president. First of all, I got to church and I heard about this news in Michigan as I was
Mhm.
walking into church, and then the member of the bishopric who was conducting asked me if I would sit on the stand with him because our bishop was meeting with our French language group for testimony meeting that day in another room,
Mhm.
and so I was caught off guard by that. And being a little emotional, and people bearing their testimonies about the prophet, and feeling emotional about that, and thinking through how I feel about President Nelson and his impact on me. And at the same time, I had to think about Elders Quorum and what we were going to do in Elders Quorum. Now, I had reached out to the person teaching the lesson, leading the conversation, and our talk that we had agreed to go on was, by this all will know that you are my disciples, from Elder Uchtdorf last conference.
Mhm.
And I said, I asked him, I said, would you be okay if I took at least the first half of the meeting and gave everyone in the quorum a chance to share their feelings about President Nelson?
Mhm.
And he said, of course. And I said, we'll just let people go until there's no more feelings to be shared. And
Mhm.
whatever time is left, I'll turn over to you for the lesson. And he said, that's fine.
He's like, great.
And
I haven't
so
even prepared the lesson, so perfect. That's it. I'm just joking.
maybe, probably not, knowing
No,
him.
I'm teasing.
Probably not. But so in Elders Quorum, I conducted, and we did our normal announcements, and we had an opening prayer, and the person saying the prayer mentioned President Nelson, of course. And then when I was done with announcements, I shared just one of my feelings, and I said, "Listen, I know President Nelson." I said, number one, he was prophet for 7.5 years,
Mhm.
right? I said, how long did it feel like he was prophet to you?
Hmm.
To me, it felt like he was prophet for 25 years. And I realized the reason is because he crammed 25 years worth of our typical changes into those 7 years.
Yeah.
And number two, he served as prophet from the age of 94 to 101.
Yeah. Jeez.
In that term, he went to 32 different countries, visited 6 continents, was on the go all the time, welcoming visitors whenever he was in Utah. The man had the energy of a 50-year-old up until 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just amazing. And then I said, and lastly, the thing that hit me the hardest was the thing that had the biggest impact on me was Peacekeepers Wanted. or
Yep.
Peacemakers wanted.
Peacemakers. Yep.
And there's a lot of others, right? And so I said that and bore my testimony, and turned the time over to the group to share. And there were several people that stood up and said, I felt the prompting to stand up in sacrament meeting, but I didn't do that. And I'm so glad I can stand up here and share what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And so we had a wonderful conversation about President Nelson and the impact he made. And it wasn't without tears.
Yeah.
And it was, I think what you did was wonderful. I wish I would have thought about the 5 minutes of silence. I think that's a wonderful way of starting it as well.
I stole that from Thomas McConkie, grandson of Elder Worthland and of Elder McConkie.
That's right.
Yeah. He always used to do that, and he would do it with like the whole like sound bath in our Sunday school. He had sound and the whole thing that he would make. This was the only time I've ever been in a Sunday school class, when he would teach, that people would come for Sunday school only and listen to him and then be able to go. So,
yeah.
I want to take a break. When we come back, I want to get into the passing of President Nelson. There's lots of chatter, some of the things that have occurred during his administration. Always sounds so presidential, but he was the president of the Church of Jesus
during his term.
During his term. So we'll get into some of that when we come back in the second half of Articles of News. Let me take just a moment to tell you all about bestdjinutah.com. That is the website where you can learn all about me. Oh, sure, you probably feel like you know me, but you know me in the cultural hall sense. I have a DJ company, now 6 of us strong, great event hosts, MCs, and DJs that can be able to make whatever event you have coming up absolutely spectacular, and hope you will reach out to us. Now you're thinking, well, wait a minute, Richie, I don't live in Utah. Would you travel? Absolutely, I would travel. Would they travel? Absolutely, they would travel. Whatever your event is, doesn't have to be a wedding or a community event. We can do all sorts of things. I can teach you line dancing. I can dance with you. We can do partner dancing. We can do all kinds of things, but we can't do any of it if you don't hit me up. You can go to bestdjinutah.com. You can fill out the form to get more information or get a quote, and then I will get right back to you. Find out why I'm so busy and why sometimes we don't get episodes of the Cultural Hall. It's all because of bestdjinutah.com. Here in the second half of Articles of News, I was actually still doing a party when I received news. One of the guests at this particular wedding was a former host of the Cultural Hall. Lindsay, throw your hands up in the air. She was there with her husband and said, "Did you hear the news?" Showed me her phone and said, "President Nelson has passed." And so, it was early Sunday morning, late Saturday night for me when I found out. And it's interesting. The like relief is not the right word, but where I just feel like joy for the prophet. I had the same thing with President Monson as well.
Yes.
Where I'm just like, I bet he's so happy. Job well done, and I bet he's so happy to just be like,
yeah. It's the kind of thing when you release a bishop or you release a stake president, and you know that the mantle comes off, but they are so relieved and so much pressure is taken off of them. Exactly.
Yeah, and I started to immediately think of the things that had transpired while he was leader of the church. So
yeah.
I asked what any person in the year 2025 would do, ChatGPT. I said, "Hey, ChatGPT, tell me about
what's changed,
the biggest accomplishments, the things that occurred during his tenure." Number one, of course, we would be silly to not say the sustained informal effort to call it the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And here is how this part of the story relates to our first story. There is a byproduct reckoning of this shooting in Michigan that will be a wrestle on the national scene for the next little bit. Trump. This is an attack on Christians, and the amount of people who have said, this is very sad, and these people are not Christian people, has been remarkable to me on a national scope. How many people have said, oh yeah, no, terrible, we shouldn't have shootings at church, but please do not call them Christian people. The Mormons are not Christians. And there will be that again. We always talk about it. Well, of course, Mormons are Christians. Well, why aren't we? Well, how you define and all these things. But there will be a large national conversation because of this shooting. Are Mormon Christian people?
There's a silver lining of a discussion that will come out because of that. I was fairly impressed by the reporting in the shooting that many of the news sources called us the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Right.
Of course, many also did not call us
Mhm.
that. But I think in the past, 10, 15 years ago, 95% would have said Mormon.
Correct.
And yesterday it was 50% probably
Yeah.
that said that.
It was interesting. One of the news reports I was listening, they were just sort of, it was right before the press conference, and they were just sort of ad-libbing. And I don't think that the person ad-libbing knew that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Mormon Church were the same church by the way that he was referencing them. Well, I don't know. Do the Mormons know the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? And I just, so there.
Okay.
The other part of that, with the emphasis on the name of the church, the changing of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and then, of course, the new church symbol using the Christus. That
Yes.
huge change, right? Temple and
Can you remember what the symbol was before the Christus?
no. Did we have a
Neither
symbol
can I.
before?
So
Yeah.
yes, we did, but
Yeah.
I can't either, which tells you it's been very effective for us.
I would tell you, I think it was just words. I think it was just words and a.
Well, there was
What?
the words,
Oh
but I
no, it
think
was Moroni. It was Moroni. It was a.
well, there was Moroni. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's right.
But I would tell you, when my wife gets her haircut or anyone gets their haircut and then says, "Do you like this hair better than how I had it before?" As soon as I see whatever the new is, I can't remember
Yeah,
for
it's
the life
gone.
of me what the
Good.
previous hair looked like. So there's that.
I'm glad it's not just my age causing that.
President Nelson announced an unprecedented number of new temples.
200, right?
I think yes. Corey
I-
K. Ward, the Pharaoh, would tell you exactly. If not 200, like 187 or something like that. I can't remember
Right.
where that crossover was, but more than any other prophet.
Absolutely.
You'll remember that it was in his time that civil marriage and sealing waiting
Well,
period.
hold on before you leave the temples.
Okay.
Before you leave the temples, I think there's something really interesting in the way he announced temples.
Go on.
Of course, he announced a bunch of temples that in the regular way. Oh, we're
Mhm.
building a new temple in Orem, and of course, Orem has property for a temple.
Mhm.
We're building a temple in this city and that city.
Mhm.
He was not afraid to announce building temples in places where we honestly hadn't done any real prep work yet.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some temples that haven't even started yet that he announced years ago because that was the case. And I actually appreciated him being willing to lean forward and make those announcements. I think that's a good thing, to not be so conservative
Mm-hmm.
and to actually, out of revelation, suggest a temple someplace. And maybe that temple doesn't come about as speedily as we all think it should, but someday it will.
Yeah. That element of that feels super prophetic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I like that. I don't know today, but someday, he said. I do kind of like that. Permission to move on to the civil marriage?
Permission granted.
The requirement, you'll remember, and some people may not even remember this. You used to have to, if you got married civilly, wait a year in the United States. And it wasn't the same way everywhere. There were places within the church where laws of that land were different, so that you could get married one day and then get temple sealed the next day. But in the United States, if you got married civilly, you had to wait an entire year before you could get married in the temple. President Nelson, done with that.
And what was amazing is that revelation coincided with COVID.
That's right.
Think about it. Prior to that, when you used to have to wait a year, if we had COVID and the temples are closed and a couple wants to get married, think about the conflict they would have had. Do I get married civilly and then have to wait a year if this COVID thing ends? And the angst that they would have had to go through to think about that. Or should we put it off for 2 years? Can we put it off for 2 years? And it was absolutely inspired that he made this change before COVID. And I just happened to be a bishop during that period. And it blessed my life incredibly to be able to officiate almost a dozen weddings during the period of COVID. and the rest of my term as bishop. And what was amazing, I think the very best wedding experiences were where someone was married civilly, and then within 24 hours went to the temple and was sealed. And there was no reduction of the meaning of the sealing whatsoever.
Right.
And in many cases, I officiated the wedding and went to the sealing. And it was a spirit-filled 24 hours where everyone from, non-member families, less active families, anyone was able to come to the wedding. And those that were there to celebrate their eternal sealing in the temple were also there and celebrating that with them. And what a special and inspired change to our policy.
And it allowed, if you're a non-member and you're getting sealed, you're going to get sealed in the temple. You used to have to make the choice because part of that marriage, your marriage would occur in the temple. So non-member friends and family,
Parents
you had to make that choice to go, nope, sorry, doing it this way. And it was this wrestle with, do I do it this way and get married in the temple? This thing that I believe very much in. I want the eternity with my companion. Or do I do this civilly and then have to wait? It just, people will talk about, hurt feelings years after the fact about not being able to see their son or daughter or sibling's wedding because of how this was, and just eliminated that.
I've heard people talk about the blessings of having to make that difficult decision as well.
Sure.
And this isn't to reduce any of that at all with people. But I think the blessings available now under the new policy are just massive. The ability for someone to not have to choose, to not have their parents or siblings at their marriage, I think is beautiful. And still availing the same sealing benefits, the same sealing blessings.
Other things that President Nelson, the witnesses for ordinances, don't forget that any endowed member with a temple recommend can serve as a witness for temple sealings now. That's a change under him. Any baptized church member, including women, youth, and children, can serve as witnesses for baptisms in and out of the temple. A change under the, I like to say the Nelson administration.
I love it. That's a great change. However, I've been at baptisms where the witnesses were, let's say, people from the rising generation who were performing as witnesses, and they may not have been trained quite as well to be paying attention to whether the person was completely submerged or not. And someone else had to step in and ask that it be done a second time. But I think it's wonderful and beautiful. I love sitting in the temple and seeing the witnesses be women. I think that's a wonderful thing.
Temple ceremony adjustments. Changes were made to the temple endowment ceremony to simplify the language, clarify the doctrine, emphasize the equal partnership between men and women in the covenant relationship with God, and the change to the temple recommend questions. The interview questions for temple recommend were revised to clarify understanding of temple covenants and prepare members more fully. So that is just a couple of the changes. Oh, but we're not finished yet, and neither was he.
Well, and the temple ones, my gosh, if you look at the changes in the temple ceremonies themselves, he had more changes in 7 years than we have had ever since the endowment was restored to the earth. I think. I mean, the experience now walking in to receive your endowment compared to when I received my endowment in 1983, completely different experience. In the temple, and an amazingly different experience preparing to go to the temple. Now that all of the temple ordinances and covenants and even temple clothing are available to be seen and understood and learned about on the church's website itself before you ever go to the temple. I think that may be one of the biggest changes in the entire term of President Nelson's presidency.
Other things, the reversal of, you'll remember, the 2015 policy that had designated same-sex marriage as apostasy and barred baptism for children living with same-sex parents. That was reversed under President Nelson in April of 2019. Also, under President Nelson, church leaders issued updated guidelines clarifying that gender transition is considered a serious matter that may result in church discipline. The missionary program, weekly communication with missionaries. Full-time missionaries were granted permission to communicate with their families weekly via text, phone, or video chat instead of only on Christmas Day and Mother's Day. And under President Nelson, the option for young people to serve as service missionaries, living at home and serving locally, was expanded. Also, 2-hour church, come follow me, the ministering program, the combination of high priests into elders quorum, the discontinuation of the Boy Scouts of America, the children and youth program focused on personal goal setting, gospel learning and service. There's that has been replaced. The ward young women class names. We got rid of the names Beehives, Maya Maids, and Laurels, and class organization became flexible. The bishop as the young men's president. The bishop and his counselor now serve as a young men's presidency for the ward. That under President Nelson.
The ages that people now advance, particularly when they're 11 and 12 years old and when you receive the Aaronic priesthood.
The new general authority 70 and apostle appointments, that being those that were appointed in the time. That President Nelson, the partnership with the NAACP, a combination of the church handbook from no, you don't get that book to it's out there and it's one.
Two
and
books to one book.
And then everything with President Nelson's COVID-19 response, certainly underneath his administration. There's been an interesting meme that's gone around that said, look who was a prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints during the Olympics that were held in Utah. It was a man that was a marketing man. And then look who was prophet under or prophet over the church during a global pandemic. It was a doctor. And then, the shoe to drop is look who's the
next prophet?
Who's the next prophet? A professional in constitutional law. And the meme, gulp, here goes, as we look towards that. It is assumed, though, not written doctrinally, that it will be President Oaks who will be the next prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ.
That's the fair assumption.
Yeah. Could technically be you, Verlin. Could technically be me. Won't be either of us, I can say with 100% surety. But a few things around that. And since this may be one of our last episodes before General Conference, we'll probably pick up a news again this week. In fact, I may tap you to try and do that news to get to all the stories that we were going to talk about. Should we?
Yeah, the 16 stories we had lined up. Yeah.
But so here's a few things that I think. I think that this coming General Conference will be the first time that we will hear posthumously from a prophet.
Susan was asking me the same thing. She said, do you think he's already pre-recorded his message?
Yes, 1,000%.
And I said,
he has.
Yeah, I probably so. Yeah. Now they could have had it scheduled for some time this week, but given his health concerns, I'm sure they did it as soon as they could. That's an interesting prospect. I think that would be very special to be able to hear from him posthumously.
Yeah, it does. So it's an interesting thing on the other side of this, and this is probably more cultural than anything, and also leads to the second thing that is an interesting big question mark around General Conference is because he is passed. Is it a weird? Weird is not the right word for it, but is it this sort of power struggle? Is not the thing that I want to say, but it is it is an odd place if we have someone new in leadership and we're hearing from the person who has just passed and was in leadership. I think that there are a lot of people that will sort of struggle for this. Like, we love him. We're glad we're able to have it, but they don't know where to place it. Like, should he be speaking at this thing? Because now he's not the prophet. We sort of immediately, like, once people are released or once people are passed on, we sort of go, that was the end of this. Now it's the beginning of this. Will people struggle with that?
That brings up a second question. Usually the practice is that the new prophet is sustained only after the funeral of the prior prophet has occurred. I don't know what the timing is around this, but do you think that the new prophet will be sustained as part of General Conference or after?
I do.
Okay.
Because otherwise, that is a long 6 months.
Well, we can now appoint a new prophet between general conferences. We do that with apostles and with general authorities.
And I think that they will do it. I think that we will sustain him as a prophet, and I think that there will be some people that will feel very weird that we're doing that before he's been laid to rest. But I think administratively, and if we can stop and think about it that way, that sort of makes more sense. If we can make sure that we portray it in a way that feels sensitive to President Nelson,
Yes.
and maybe that's part of the message. I don't know, but
It could be.
it seems to me that not only as a prophet, but just as an individual, that he sort of knew where I mean, we all know where things are headed, but he maybe been keenly aware of where things were headed and could have said and given instruction, and maybe we'll hear such instruction that says, guys, it's okay. We can pass this on and I'll go, and then he can, and we do that.
Now here's what I'm thinking. What I would love to see happen is I think you're right. I think President Nelson knew that there wasn't much more to come. I mean, the fact that the story was put in Time magazine with kind of the summary of his ministry and of his messages it was not a random thing.
Nope.
That was done that way. I think it would be wonderful if his pre-recorded message is a very simple message, bearing his testimony and maybe a couple of his key messages. But I would hope that he also has temple announcements in his message. And he says, and here are the temples I'm announcing. And that's the last kind of that we hear live from President Nelson. I think that would be a wonderful thing. And I don't think that's too awkward for someone picking up, and someone like Elder Oaks, who is so experienced and so knowledgeable and so loving of President Nelson. He'll handle that just fine.
Yeah. And I also think it would be a tremendous, and so here's the other part, as we get to almost an hour of us talking, it means we get a new apostle.
We do. I'm excited about this.
And I can think of, get ready, emails, contact@theculturalhall.com. I can think of no better way for President Nelson to be sort of, I don't know if honored, that's not the right way to phrase this, but the transition with the passing of President Nelson to welcome Elder Dubé to the Quorum of the 12 Apostles.
I think that would be a very special thing, right? Yes. That President Nelson leaves and he's built this very strong relationship with the NAACP and said some very strong messages about how we should be acting with our brethren of different and sisters of different races and backgrounds and ethnicities. I think that would be beautiful if that were to happen. That would be very appropriate to happen. Now, is it guaranteed to happen?
No.
I think many were surprised the last go round. But I have, I mean, as I thought about this, you posted on Facebook, actually, what do you think? Godoy or Dubé? Elder Kieran was a little bit of a surprise. And I don't know how many of us actually knew Elder Gong or Elder Suarez beforehand very well.
Right.
And I am so impressed. Not that I'm unimpressed by others, but I am so impressed by those three men.
Yeah.
And the way that they minister, and it's very different between the three of them. So I'm just excited to see who is that next apostle. And I think Elder Dubé would be wonderful.
Yeah. Elder Cossé, the presiding bishop of the church, another one that a lot of people have been talking about. And
if you want a good French accent in all of his talks, we have the German accent, the British accent. Now we can get the French, and we have the Portuguese accent. Yeah, we get a French accent would be great.
I'm hoping that I can find it. I don't know where he sent it to me, but somewhere Corey K. Ward, the Pharaoh himself, has it's like the top 3 statistician based on age and all these other things, and I can't remember.
So he posted that on your Facebook post, on your personal Facebook post, when you shared it on your page.
Okay.
And then he put the link as his first comment.
That's where it is. Thank you.
And it's beautiful. What a beautiful piece of work, Corey. My gosh.
Do you know who? I'm going there now. The top one is neither of the people that we have talked about. So let me.
That's right.
Get there real quick. Oh no. Maybe there it is. Sorry, everyone. It is, like you say, worthwhile. I'm not finding it, so I need you to search too.
Okay. I'll try to search here.
This is what some people don't like, is the statistics in and around like whether or not, Elder Bednar will become the prophet. How likely is that going to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, here it is. Maybe there it is. But there we. Oh, hang on. Now I'm copying. I'm not going to edit this out, everyone. So I'm going to narrate this as I'm copying and pasting.
This is entertaining podcasting
Oh no,
at its
it is.
best.
Oh, it is, because the first line I saw that Elder Casse was the second line, and I thought that there was someone that was first, and I kept trying to scroll up. So this has things like their age, their ideal age for being called in, which is typically 61 and a half, is when they're called as apostles. That's over all of the time, and so it ranks sort of the likelihood as far as this goes.
It looks at their term of their term of service after being called into whatever position that they're in, how many years they've served, their ages, how many years they would be potentially serving as an apostle based on averages, and then kind of ranks who the likely are to be called.
And then he also has, and I would be curious for what qualifies this, but there's one of the columns that is a diversity tab.
Yes.
So different things that would call into it. So the top 5, according to this document, is Elder Casse, most likely, statistically speaking, Elder Dubé, then Elder Kevin R. Duncan, Elder Marcus B. Nash, Elder Michael T. Ringwood, or Elder Michael John U. T., or Elder Jose Texiera, and then Carlos Godoy. I mean,
it's an opportunity.
Yes, it is an opportunity, and it could be someone else.
It could be, and the Lord will choose who it is, and He'll provide that inspiration and revelation to the remaining apostles. But wouldn't it be special to have that be the replacement, in essence, for Elder Nelson?
Yeah. The last thing, and we'll just very quickly speculate about this. President Oaks will call a first presidency.
He will.
Absorbed back in will be obviously Elder Oaks, because he's now the prophet, and Elder Eyring, because that's how it goes. So who are going to be his first presidency? To me, it only makes sense Elder Bednar will be called into the first presidency, because Elder Bednar is getting to the point now where, again, we're looking statistically, the likelihood that there will be President Bednar, it's like 57% or something like that, unless obviously some sort of illness or so he needs the time to be able to have the hands-on training in the first presidency to be able to learn that position. I know a lot of people want this to be a mythical, magical, and then he just got the mantle and was able to step into it. That's not entirely how it works.
If you can help someone prepare, you might as well help someone prepare.
So to me, it's Elder Bednar as an obvious choice. Do you have any thoughts as to who the other first presidency will be?
I personally, and I have no impact on anything, right?
Sure.
I personally hope
you don't?
I hope that Elder Uchtdorf is pulled back in. Because he is the second senior most apostle. Is he not?
So as we get back into it, you have, with President Oaks being the senior most, and then Elder Holland.
And then Elder Holland. And then you have Elder
Eyring. Nope.
Oh, Elder Eyring is
and then
the
Elder
next one.
Uchtdorf.
Okay, then Elder
I'm pretty
Uchtdorf.
sure.
Okay. So I think I would go to Elder Uchtdorf.
Yeah. And I'm saying Elder Cook.
Okay.
I think that there is... that this is a transition period, because Elder Eyring in his 90s, Elder Uchtdorf in his 80s. This is a transition.
But Elder Eyring's health is failing dramatically, right? Elder Uchtdorf appears to still be very healthy and very, vital. I'm trying to think who would be the dark horse. Who would be the dark horse that I think an Elder Gong would be a really interesting member of the presidency.
I mean, the dark horse is Elder whoever the first apostle or the next apostle is. That would be the come be the
come be in the first presidency.
And everyone goes, wait, what? We wasn't even in. It wasn't a part of this. But I'm saying Elder Cook and Elder Bednar.
I have lots of reasons I won't mention because we talk about politics too much. But Elder Uchtdorf is a favorite of mine.
Sure.
And I would love him to have that influence at that level again.
Agreed. And also not my speculation as to who will be. Maybe another later news this week as different things come out. We hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body.
And then if you weren't healthy enough to listen next week, and if you weren't healthy enough to listen this week, you'll be healthy enough to listen next week.
And that when the time comes, you'll be able to travel home in safety.
In the meantime, go Tar Heels. Chris at Alpine Lakes Travel, Debbie Wanless, Chocolate Cake Bites Podcast, and the Tiger with a U will be saving a seat for you
On the back row
of
the
Cultural Hall.
Save me a seat, it's sure to be neat on the back row. We really gotta go on the Cultural Hall show.